Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I hope you're doing good. What I'm going to talk about now is the Latin language. In the history of English language, the knowledge about the role that Latin language played is very, very significant, and we need to understand that. So the purpose or the objective of this session is to help you understand what was the impact of the conquest, that is the Roman conquest of England, and how it is related to the use of Latin language. Actually, when some area is conquered by new rulers, one of the ways or one of the signs that it is conquered, that it is now being ruled by new people, is the use of their language by the local or the native people. So the use of Latin language can be considered to be a sign or a mark or as an evidence of the Romanization of this island. In the times that we are talking about after this process of Romanization, Latin inscriptions could be found everywhere. They could be seen everywhere in the island. These inscriptions were mainly from military and official class. So, the official language that they were using at that time was basically Latin. It is very important for us as learners or students of the history of English language that the spread of Latin in the island was of a peculiar way or of a peculiar dimension. The inscriptions that I have talked about, their presence does not at all mean that there was a widespread use of Latin at that time. Rather, they were being, they are a sign of that Latin was being used by particular class of people, the class that was the ruling class, the class that was the upper class, the class that was the class of people who were in military, the class who were also leading in the social life. Actually, when we compare the use of Celtic language, that was the language of the natives of this island, with the Latin language, we can notice that Latin language actually did not replace the use of Celtic language in the Britain as it did in Gaul. Its use was confined, and it was confined to a particular class of people, as I have earlier said, the upper class of people. Now the question is, why the upper class people used Latin? Think of the world you are living in. There are certain languages with which prestige is attached. For instance, prestige is attached with English. Think of which language is used by the upper class in Pakistan, and you would realize that is English language. So, the adoption of a particular language is based on the prestige that is attached to it, which is related to how the upper class, how the people from the upper stratum of the society connect themselves with that. So in those times, what I would say is Latin was a language that the upper class wanted themselves to be identified with. Occasional graffiti, however, were found and could be seen where, we may make claims that the artisans were also using Latin. But of course, that use was very, very limited. Latin was spoken in outside the city houses occupied by the well-to-do. So, as we have big villas and havelis and all those houses that are built by the well-to-do class that are outside the main urban areas. In the same way, in the island, the situation was the same, and Latin was spoken by these well-to-do people. Tacitus tells us that in the times of Agricola, the Britons now became eager to learn the language. So it does not mean that there had been no resistance, but this was gradually the time when resistance was coming towards an end and people had started adopting Latin language for themselves. By AD 96, the poet Martial boasted that his works were read even in this far-off Ireland. So this, Martial's claim might be slightly exaggerated, but this shows that Latin was spreading. Certainly many people in Roman Britain habitually spoke Latin, or upon occasions they could at least use it, or they could use it whenever needed. But its use was not sufficiently spread because, Celtic had its own place still. It still was the language of the lower class people, the language of the working class people, the language of the natives, the language that common people could relate themselves to. And, it was up till the upheaval of the Germanic invasions that this remained so the case. Its use probably began to decline after 410, the approximate date at which the last of the Roman legions were officially withdrawn from the island.